It seems there is no shortage of scandal these days, and the fashion world is no different. From Prada's blackface controversy a few years ago, to Balenciaga's marketing choice to use children in imagery paired with adult toys, to Dior's recent human rights violations. If you are a fan of luxury, and if you've been paying attention, you are no stranger to some of your favorite brands being caught up in scandal. In this video, we'll look at the latest luxury scandal, what it means for us as consumers of these brands. I'll share some resources I found, and I'll tell you about the single most important thing you can do to affect change in these companies if you don't like the way they're operating. Welcome, I'm Autumn Beckman, and I am here to help you live your most luxurious life within your budget. I post new videos on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, so please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of those or my daily community posts where I share the best sales of the day and fabulous handbags that I find. Also, don't miss my website, autumnbeckman.com. I will have it linked below, and that is where you'll find things that I have for sale, such as handbags and accessories, and the My Handbag Collection Organizer, which I designed to help you curate and organize a collection of your most treasured things. This is the front and back of the item tracker page, which is where you can record everything that you would want to know about your handbags and small goods. This is the heart of my planner, and I'm going to start posting a lot more soon, so keep an eye out on my website. Now, before we get started talking about all this scandal, I want to do a little bit of kind of a disclaimer, but not really a disclaimer, more like a little note, an acknowledgement that some of the topics that we'll discuss today, they're often surrounded by a lot of judgment, where some people feel like if you don't agree with their perspective on that topic, that you're a bad person. And admittedly, I feel that way about some of these things. But I want this video to be a judgment-free zone. And for that reason, I've structured it in a way so that it is informational and so that I'm not trying to convince you of anything, and certainly not passing judgment. What I would ask of you is that the comment section be treated the same. So please absolutely feel free to leave comments on this video, leave your opinions, your perspectives, but please do your best to word it in a way that's respectful, not just to me, but to other people who might be reading your comments. Now, let's talk about what, to my knowledge, is the most recent scandal in the luxury fashion space, which is that Dior scandal. Now, I'm not going to go really in depth on what happened here. I'll give you a little overview, but we're going to use this as a springboard to talk about the other things that we're discussing in the video, particularly what we can do about these scandals as consumers. So the overview of the Dior scandal is that they had a factory in Italy that was a Chinese factory run by Chinese immigrants, and the workers there were Chinese too. That's my understanding. And it was revealed that the workers were not being treated well at all. Like, they were living in the factory, they had mattresses on the floor that they were sleeping on. If they were awake, they were working. Not great conditions. Not conditions that you or I would want to work in, I would imagine. And this story broke about a month prior to when I'm filming this. And several people have asked me in the comment sections if I would do a video about this. And the reason I haven't done one sooner is because I wasn't sure what to say. Obviously, I don't want people being treated badly, so I could come on a video and say that, but then what else do I say to fill 8 or 10 or 12 minutes? So I started to think more broadly about it. I also watched, I'm going to link this video for you, Dale of Dale's Addiction. She did a video where she talked about this, and I agreed with, it's been a few days since I watched it. I'm going to say everything, but maybe almost everything that she said. It's a fantastic video. When you're done with this, go watch it. It'll be linked in the description box, along with the other resources I'm going to share with you today. But here is my really honest, raw opinion when I hear about some new scandal, whether it's in the luxury space or anywhere else. Inevitably, what follows these kinds of things is people talk about boycotting those brands. And that's where I kind of roll my eyes. Not because boycotting is a bad idea. I think it's a great idea. That's a fantastic way to send a message to a company. But it has to be done in a certain way. It has to be masses, because if you're the only one doing it, or 20 or 30 people, or even 100, even a few thousand people, stop buying things from a particular company. When it's a really big company like these are, it doesn't have that much of an impact. They're getting a lot of free press, a lot of attention, which can be a really good thing, even if it's negative. To boycott properly, you need the vast majority of their customers to stop buying, and to do it for a significant period of time. Now, one of the problems with doing that with these luxury companies is most of us who may like those brands don't buy from them very often because of the prices. Most of us can't afford it. If we want, let's say, a Lady Dior bag, most of us have to save up a long time to get one of those directly from the boutiques, and we'd probably only ever buy that one. The other reason I kind of roll my eyes at the idea of a boycott is that there are so many scandals. This Dior one is going to be followed by something else, and at some point people forget that they're upset with Dior and they start buying again because the latest new outrage has come along. And it's great to be outraged about things you should be outraged about, like human rights violations. But people aren't consistent, is what I'm saying. So ultimately it doesn't have a big impact on a business, particularly in this luxury space. And one more thing to add to that, if you are someone who's now interested in boycotting Dior, you would also need to know that Dior is not its own standalone company. They are part of a conglomerate under the umbrella of LVMH. So it's not going to make a lot of difference if you stop buying Dior and then start buying Fendi instead, or you start buying Louis Vuitton, because they're all under the same umbrella. Your money is still basically going to the same place. So if you really want to boycott Dior, then you also really need to boycott Louis Vuitton and Fendi and Tiffany and Company and all the other plethora of companies that are owned by LVMH. And if you know realistically that you are not going to do that, but you still want to make a statement and you still want to stand up for the things you believe in, well, the first thing is to figure out what you believe in, what's important to you. I came up with 5 things that I feel like are talked about a lot in terms of violations and things people care about. One is what we just discussed, human ethics. So how are employees treated? What are the hours they have to work? Do they get fair pay? Do they have good working conditions? Are people treated equally? How is toxic behavior in the workplace handled? And some of us also care about intellectual property. For example, is the product you're buying the original design, or is it a dupe, or is it counterfeit? Some people care about that, some don't. Again, no judgment. And one of the factors that people have used for a long time as a basic standard of it's okay for me to buy this product but not this one is by looking at where that product was made. So a lot of people will avoid things made in China because of ideas they have about human rights violations there. And other people will say, well, it's made in Italy. Things are a lot better there. Workers are treated better. But we know now, and we've known for a while, talked about this several times on my channel, that made in label doesn't mean much of anything anymore. So you really can't go by that. A second thing people care a lot about is animal ethics. Are animals used at all in whatever product you're buying? How are the animals treated during their life? How are they slaughtered? When they are slaughtered, what are they slaughtered for? What parts of them are used? And how much is waste? For example, I know with Portland leather goods, and I will have them linked below. Today, I'm filming this the same day this video goes up. Today's the last day of their 30% off sale. If you want to take advantage of that, I'll put the code below. But Portland Leather Goods uses cow leather, and all of it is a byproduct of the meat industry. So those animals were already being slaughtered for that purpose, and then they're able to use the hides to make bags. A third thing people care a lot about is the environmental impact. How sustainable are your materials, your goods, your processes? How well does your company comply with environmental protection laws? A fourth thing is where your money as the consumer goes once it gets to a company. So is your money used to pay workers fairly? Does the company that you're supporting with your money pay their fair share of taxes? Does that company donate to any causes? And if so, what are they? Are they things that you care about? Are they things you agree with? And a fifth thing a lot of people care about is values. What values or causes does that company claim to support? And are they actually supporting those, or is it just a way to market their products? Those 5 things are important to all of us. But there are 2 other things that really come into play when making our purchasing decisions, and they can very much get in the way of how much influence those 5 things have on our decisions. And these 2 things that get in the way are finances, so being able to get the most value for your money, and convenience. How easy it is to get your hands on something that you're looking for. Because most of us absolutely do not have time to do in-depth research on all the companies we buy from. We don't even have time to research who their parent company is. So in that sense, if you're someone who does really care about some of these 5 things, or other things that I didn't mention, the easiest thing to do is probably to buy from small businesses. If they're not part of a big corporation and conglomerate, it's probably a lot easier for them to use ethical and sustainable practices. But let's be real here. If we're talking about luxury handbags, luxury fashion, most of us are interested in particular brand names. So in that sense, the small businesses aren't really going to cut it for us. So given that, what can we do to make better choices and not make our lives more difficult when it comes to buying from these big companies? I have 3 suggestions. There are other organizations that already exist that have already done a lot of research into these companies, and they have that information available on the internet for you to access, mostly for free. I'll tell you about a few of those in just a second, and they will all be linked below. So you can utilize those to do quick research and feel like you're making more informed decisions about the companies you want to purchase from. Second idea, and this is something I do all the time, as those of you who have been with me for a while already know, but it's also something I saw suggested by one of the resources that I'm going to tell you about, is to buy Preloved. Now I know that's not everybody's thing. I'm not trying to convince you that you should do that, but if it is something that interests you, then it's definitely something you can feel good about. And the third thing you can do, which I think is the single most important and most impactful thing you can do as an individual, is if you are fortunate enough to live in a country that allows this, then please vote. Figure out what's important to you. And let me say, I know we're not all out there voting based on our beliefs around fashion, okay? But the things that we do care about in fashion, some of the things I've already talked about, they extend well beyond the fashion realm. So figure out what is important to you. Figure out which politicians support the things that you support, or which political parties, and vote for them. And I know that it may seem like voting doesn't mean anything for a lot of people. Your one vote doesn't really matter. But when you vote, you're helping to elect people who create policy. And those policies have the strongest impact on how businesses run and choices that they make for things like human rights, animal rights, the environment, and even where they locate different aspects of their business. One quick example and then I'll move on. In my research for this video, I found something called the Fabric Act. FABRIC stands for Fashion Accountability and Building Real Institutional Change. It says the act addresses both the environmental and social impact of outsourcing garment production. It will encourage transparency in the fashion supply chain, ethical production standards, and a 30% tax credit for clothing producers willing to relocate their manufacturing to the US. The FABRIC Act still needs to pass the Senate and then the House of Representatives, so obviously this is one in the US. But that's one example of a piece of policy that affects the fashion industry, but also really affects a lot of other things. Now I have 5 resources to share with you to help you figure out where you might want to shop or where you might not want to shop. And again, I'm not telling you what your decision should be there, but these 5 places will give you more information to help you decide what's best for you. And I'll run through these quickly. The first is an app. It's called Goods Unite Us. It looks like this. It'll come up as GUU and then Debate Politics and Shop. This app looks at where companies or the higher-ups in those companies donate their money in terms of American politics. So it breaks it down by percentage, how much of their donations they gave to Democrats versus Republicans. That app lists a lot of the handbag brands that we buy from. I won't tell you the results of those. Go in and get it for yourself. It's totally free. You don't have to sign up for an account or anything. You just search for the name of the company and it'll give you that information. It's very interesting. You can also look at where you buy groceries, where you buy gas. They have a ton of companies listed there. The second resource is Cladwell, and this one is more about understanding some of the things you might want to look for. They list 4 things: fair trade certification, global organic textile standard. These last 2 I thought were the most interesting. Self-enforced as opposed to mandated codes or inspections on trade and environmental issues. So rather than simply complying to laws that someone else has mandated, companies that create their own higher standards that they try to adhere to. And for transparency, so how easy do they make it for you to find the information you're looking for about them? I will say Coach does a lot of that on their website. They have made things like sustainability a really big factor, and they've been doing that for a long time now. They have pages and pages on their website devoted to that. I'll have that linked below too if you're interested in checking it out. And a lot of that has to do with their Coachtopia line, which is sustainable, or at least more sustainable. The third resource is ethicalconsumer.org. Now this one is UK based, so it has a lot of UK companies represented, and there is a fee to get some of the information, but it's only £30 a year. They have an article there on ethical designer clothing, and it says that the article's over 3 years old, so the information may be out of date, but I thought this was really interesting. They look at a few factors and then they score different companies based on the factors they're looking at. So the good things they're looking at are, is it recycled? Is it organic? Do they put people before profits? And then the bad things, they talk about fur and leather and viscose, which a lot of that has to do with the environmental impact. And they said all of these fashion brands scored badly, and that the lowest scoring ones, I will read you this list, are Chanel, Marc Jacobs, Louis Vuitton, Loewe, Kenzo, Givenchy, Fendi, and Prada. But again, some of that information is out of date. I know there have been some changes with a few of those companies at least, where they don't use exotics anymore. The fourth resource is goodonyou.eco. They have a directory where you can search and they'll give you a rating on different companies based on a few different things. And they also have an article called The Most Ethical Luxury Fashion Brands. And that was interesting because it lists a whole bunch of brands that I have never heard of before. And then finally they get down to brands like Gucci and Burberry and YSL and Alexander McQueen. And they say that those are good, but only if you buy them pre-loved, which is where I got that idea for the pre-loved earlier. And then the fifth resource, this is the one that went into the most depth. They have this 100+ page report. It's from 2024, so it's recent, that you can download for free, and you can go through it and get all kinds of really detailed information. They look at accountability, decarbonization, energy procurement, financing decarbonization, and just transition and advocacy. And this was really interesting because they said they looked at 250 of the world's largest fashion brands, and they scored them from 0 to 100, and the average score over all 250 of those brands is only 18, with 100 being the best score. 18. They said the highest score was 75, and that was Puma. The next highest score was 74, and that was Gucci. H&M, I was shocked by this, got a score of 61, which is one of the highest. And Hermes was 49. The lowest scores, which all scored 0%, include Forever 21, not surprising, being fast fashion. Longchamp I was really surprised by because they have a recycled line. Saks and Tory Burch, which disappointed me because I really like Tory Burch, and not even from a handbag perspective, but from a business perspective. They have this whole side of the business that's all about helping women entrepreneurs, and I've been utilizing some of that, and it's fabulous. I'll link that below too in case you're interested. But that's a really interesting report to look at. So those are the 5 resources. Many of them rank brands based on different things. So keep that in mind, because you may have one resource that scores a brand really high and another that scores it really low. And the reason is because they're looking at different aspects of the business. And knowing that, and I just said, here's some resources to make it easier for you to get information on these brands. Knowing that, then, it still gets a little difficult. It still leaves you feeling kind of frustrated. As I was going through some of this, I started feeling like I need a PhD in the fashion industry to understand the depth of this and all the nuances. But even if I understood all that completely, then you have to rely on the company to be transparent and give you the information that you need to be able to make choices that are accurate and informed. And the chances of that are basically 0. So that leaves a lot of people feeling like, well, why bother? I'll just buy what I like, and it doesn't matter if this company has human rights violations or destroys the environment or whatever it might be, because everybody does it. All these big companies. And I have no control over it. So why even try? Why waste my time? So I would go back then to those 3 things that are in your control. One is educate yourself as much as you can and as much as you want to. I do think having these resources available, and I'm sure there are plenty more than the ones I'm giving you in this video, it does help a little. It makes you at least a little more informed. And then you can also use that information, if you want to inform others. Again, if you want to, buy Preloved. But then 3, what I think is the single most important thing you can do that has a real impact on how businesses run and the decisions they make, is to vote. So I will have everything I talked about today linked in the description box below, including vote.org. Please make sure that, if this is for US citizens here, please make sure that you are registered. And if you believe you're registered, go check and make sure, and then participate by voting. Even if you think it doesn't matter, I suspect it matters more than you think. I heard something the other day about elections are decided by the people who don't vote. which really just means that too many people stay home. So get out there, please, and cast your vote. And if you know of any more resources to share to help us learn about these companies, please do so in a comment below. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Hope to see you next time, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye.